Hey, yo, what is going on, you guys? Got a brand new episode of Buy or Bust for you guys today. Today, we're going to be talking about Jim Hammond. Is this card going to be worth your precious resources? As we talk about the good and the bad, key synergies, key counters, 3 separate decks for this card, as well as the floor and the ceiling. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. In case you guys did not know, Jim Hammond is the brand new Series 5 card releasing on Tuesday with the ability, at the start of each turn, get +1 power for each bonus energy you have. This is what it looks like in game, meaning that when you get the extra energy at the start of your next turn, whether that's an interaction like Hope Summers, Wiccan, Fallen One, Psylocke, Project Pegasus. Actually, I think Project Pegasus would work because it happens before like Viv and stuff would happen. I think that's kind of the way it works. I could be totally wrong there. Like, totally feel free to correct me there. But like, more like the Wiccan, Fallen One, Psylocke, Jennifer Kale, Hope Summers, Merlin kind of things, which is why when we talk about some of the key synergies, we talked about some of these cards already. So like Fallen One, you merge this with your symbiote Spider-Man, you get 12 energy on the next turn. That is 6 more energy you had than normal. Your Jim Hammond would go up 6 points. Now also with Wiccan, you get +2 max energy each turn. So your Jim Hammond would go off 2 points. And then also with Merlin, Merlin also gives you +2 max energy with Once in the Future on the next turn, or you get plus extra energy on the next turn. Not necessarily plus max energy, because you're not adding the max energy, but you're getting extra energy on this next turn. Would work with Jim Hammond. Same with the Psylocke, same with the Jennifer Kale, same with the Hope Summers, same with the Luna Snow. Those are also cards that would benefit Jim Hammond and allow him to get extra points of power. But, like any card needing extra points of power, there are also cards that will mitigate that power, such as the new and improved Red Guardian at a 3/0. It would turn off the ability of Jim Hammond. You also have Shadow King at a 3/3, resetting Jim Hammond back to a 1/2. And you also have Killmonger now in the same lane as Jim Hammond, being able to destroy that card. All 3 of these cards also were hitting this crazy OTA that we did just have, where Red Guardian lost 2 points of power, Shadow King went back to a 3 cost, and Killmonger went from global to single lane. So crazy stuff happening. Maybe they did this OTA change just to make Jim Hammond better, but who knows? We'll see. But now let's talk about the good and the bad for this card. So, the good for this card is that it has a crazy high ceiling. It can scale crazy, crazy high in power. Like, extra turns, you know, getting that Fallen One buff can get you a huge 1-cost card, which is a 1-cost card that can go really crazy vertical. Of course, there's a handful of energy enablers, like we talked about with the Merlin, Psylocke, Hope Summers, Wiccan, Fallen One, Jennifer Kale, Luna Snow. Like, those are just to name a few. Like, those are a couple just really good. Herbie's another good one that gives you some of that max energy as well. Or just, you know, giving that extra energy on the next turn. It's not max energy. I'm wording that wrong. But having just extra energy going into the next turn. So at the start of each turn, you know, Jim Hammond would get that extra power. You also have, you know, the counters got nerfed in the OTA, which makes this card a bit better, because those counters, you know, aren't as crazy. You know, you don't have a Killmonger hitting you from across the map. You only have Killmonger having to hit you in that specific lane, which allows you to move cards around other ways. You know, Zoo's in a great spot now because of the change to Killmonger. And yeah, it's a 1-cost card, so it's easy to play, whether it's on curve, a little bit later in the game. Like, you can still find ways to optimize and kind of like maximize the value of this card. But that does go in with the bad as well, because it's a bad late draw in the sense where you kind of want to have this on the board if you already have your max energy curve going, or your bonus energy curve going, because you want this card to be able to get the power, or otherwise it's not going to be able to maximize that. Of course, you know, getting +2 on the following turn with like a Wiccan is nice, you know, making this a 1/4, but it is at the start of each turn. So keeping that in mind, like if you play this on turn 6 with a Wiccan, you're not going to get that bonus power onto, you know, Jim Hammond unless there is a limboed location, because it's at the start of each turn, not the end of each turn. You know, and you have to have energy boosters or enablers. Like, you have to have cards that give you extra energy to be able to get power on this card, or this card's just going to sit at that 1/2. And, you know, it's potentially not enough time, you know, to really, really get this crazy. Of course, you know, getting this to a 1/3, 1/4, Like 1/4, 1/5 is like the premium kind of stat line for 1-cost. 1/3 is pretty good. So you may not be able to get to the crazy high ceiling, but like a 1/4, 1/5 is still really solid. You kind of look for that when it comes to like a 1-cost card, because even like base Nico, when it doubles, is a 1/4, and you know Hydra Bob's a 1/4. You know, Titania, Martyr are 1/5s. Like, so just thinking of that, 1/7 would be like the kind of like a really crazy top end too. Like, you know, with Ebony Maul kind of things, which is kind of possible with Fallen One, would give you kind of the options to get to that level. Whereas like Wiccan, you're not really getting your, you know, your Jim Hammond to that like 1/7 unless you have a Limbo. You can get it to a 1/6 if you get it right on curve, which is still really good. Right there in between the middle of those cards is a good spot for like a 1-cost, but you know, you have to have that combo piece there. And then, you know, it's kind of, are you playing the old style of Wiccan? Are you not playing the better Quicksilver Domino version of Wiccan to be able to get that power? Or are you relying more on these combo heavy decks with that Fallen One to be able to get that extra boost? Like, that's kind of like what I'm thinking with this card. What is the best way to play it? Are you going back in that old Wiccan style? I just don't think that's still like, that's not as optimized or optimal to play right now as like just the Wiccan Domino. Instead of just trying to get Jim Hammond, you have all these other options to be able to make sure you can hit Wiccan curve. You know, that's just kind of what I'm thinking. Just getting that consistency. I don't know if you actually play that in like the newer style of Wiccan. Now, moving on to the floor and the ceiling for this card. The absolute low point for this card is if this is a late draw and you don't have, you know, the ways to really optimize this and get the extra power onto it, like you draw this on turn 6 after you've already done your Wiccan stuff, so you don't get any extra bonus to this. Or you literally don't have any bonus energy at all, so this just sits at a 1/2. You know, that's like the super low end. I think the middle of the line is kind of you play this on curve or a bit later, and you have like your energy enablers, like your Wiccan. Maybe middle line is more like a Psylocke, a Hope Summers, or maybe like Jennifer Kale, kind of like middle of the pack. You get this like 1 boost, goes to that 1/3. You know, with Herbie, maybe goes to that 1/4. With Merlin, 1/4. But like top end, top of the line, absolute like ceiling, you go crazy with this card would be with a Fallen One deck. You know, getting this with a Symbiote Spider-Man or like a Shuri or Galactic Gwenpool onto your Fallen One to get just a lot of bonus energy to be able to get your Jim Hammond to really scale vertically. That would be like the absolute, you know, ceiling peak, because that would make this card like really, you know, high in power and everything. Moving on to our first decks over here. Our first deck over here. We do have some hot pixie dust. It is like a Wiccan Pixie Shell, where you have Jim Hammond also in the list to be able to get some Wiccan value. You have Merlin to be able to, you know, shuffle cards back into your deck and also get extra energy for some potential Jim Hammond things to get that extra power. You know, just being able to have like a fun kind of combo piece is kind of like what I was thinking with this. I don't think this is definitely an optimized build for Jim Hammond or even like Wiccan itself, like I was talking about. Like, you do have, you know, 4 2-cost cards to try and hit that curve for the Wicked things. And, you know, like Kate Bishop and Merlin also generate spells and arrows to be able to help you hit that Wiccan curve. You also have tech with Cosmic Ghost Rider, even Mobius, Cheap Gore, Eliath, because you also have a good bit of on reveals in this list as well. Kind of just like what I was thinking. Copycat could be instead of speed, but just a nice little Wiccan shell, maybe a little bit different. And then I think this kind of is where I think Jim Hammond probably like lives, is something like a Fallen One style deck to really optimize that. You also have Psylocke you can get with Fallen One to be able to get just an extra boost of power, which is nice to get a Gwenpool Galacta down early. Even a Symbiote Spider-Man to be able to Gwenpool twice, or set up for things a little bit later. You have Zola for your Panther. You have also Zola maybe just to get power across the board. Maybe you want to do maybe a White Tiger line or something instead. Viv to boost cards. Fastos to boost cards as well too. And then next we have more of a Mockingbird, Sasquatch, Monkey, Slam style list. This is making use of Merlin and also Hope Summers as 2 different cards that can give you extra energy to get your Jim Hammond bigger, as well as being able to slam power cards down with your Mockingbird and your Sasquatch. Not really a lot of tech pieces in this list, if any tech pieces. There's like no tech pieces in here. But you're trying to just get as much power as possible on the board. You also have Surge to be able to give you cards to be able to play out a little bit earlier and get some extra value. Maybe if it hits a 6-drop, getting power onto your Mysterio, so you have some of that hidden power to be able to play down on the end of the game. There's a bunch of different options, and then you have your energy enablers with your Merlin and with your Hope Summers to be able to get some Jim Hammond value, which, you know, with Killmonger also getting adjusted again there too, you know, you can't just Killmonger the entire board to destroy all of Kate Bishop's arrows, so something I was really looking at as just a really good potential combo piece there. But yeah, that's going to be the gist of the decks. Now let's talk about this rating we have for Jim Hammond. So I think Jim Hammond right now is kind of like a 2-star in strength, a 2-star in flexible, maybe a 1-star in adjusted. Maybe they'll actually buff this card, or maybe it's a 2-star in adjusted because they need to make it a bit better. It's kind of like my thought process here. I think it's one of the weaker cards of this season. Of course, it has a crazy high ceiling. Like, don't get me wrong there, but I definitely think like what you have to do to kind of like get this to really optimize, or like what you want to play to do this. I don't know if it has like the best home in the meta right now. I could be totally wrong. Maybe Zoo's like makes a crazy resurgence, and like Zoo goes crazy now with the Killmonger change. Maybe that's what it is that really just enables us to kind of like skyrocket and soar and be like a crazy good card. But I do think this card is going to be a bust. I can't say I suggest spending your resources necessarily on this, especially with some of the cards we have coming out later this season when it comes to potentially Warlock, but like definitely with Jocasta, I think that's definitely like more of a must-have kind of card. Spoiler alert for buy or bust in 2 weeks. But I think you guys should skip on this card for now, but I still say, like I say every single week, spend your guys' resources the way you want to spend them. If Jim Hammond is your favorite Marvel character ever and you want to have Jim Hammond, go ahead and spend your resources on him. If this is a card that fits your style of play, spend your resources on it. Because at the end of the day, you need to spend your resources on what you enjoy playing, what is going to bring you joy and bring you happiness. Because it's a video game. We're doing this for fun anyways. Why not play something that just makes you have a good time and have fun? Like, you know, we're gated by the amount of resources we have, whether we should or we shouldn't spend them, which is why we make these type of videos, you know? But, like, we're still theory crafting. Like, at the end of the day, we could be right about these cards. We could be wrong. I've been totally wrong about cards. I've been right about cards. Like, there's so far in between. We haven't been able to thoroughly test, you know, what's going to happen with these cards. The OTA just happened. You know, that kind of just flipped the meta a little bit. So, like, that also can change just a whole lot of things for you. So, like, you don't necessarily know, like, what's going to happen in these coming weeks. We also have, you know, Deadpool's Diner coming back. Is this going to be a good Diner card? Or is this a card that's going to, like, just sit in people's collections for a long while until maybe it gets buffed? Because, you know, at the end of the day, with snap packs now, good cards can get nerfed. Season pass cards do get nerfed after their season passes. And bad cards do get buffed. And bad cards kind of do get nerfed a little bit too. Like, Enchantress going to a 5 cost is a little bit crazy. Not saying it was a bad card, but it was a card that already wasn't getting played. But we have, like, that change for the tech meta. I don't know. It's crazy out here. But anyways, I do want to say thank you guys so much for watching the video today. If you guys did appreciate it and stuck around to the very end, let me know down below. Is Jim Hammond a card you're looking for? Or do you have another card coming out this season that you're more excited for? I want to say, yeah, once again, if you guys could feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you're new. Hit the notification bell if you want to be up to date with all channel posts as well. It's been real. God bless, and Tucker out.